Hello! Welcome to another episode of Myth, Legends, Fairy Tales, and Makeup, where I tell you the original stories that led to some very popular films while I do my makeup. If you're new here, hello! My name is Chantel, but you can call me Chanty, and today I'm going to be telling you the story of Snow White as written by the Grimm Brothers. But before we get started, I always just like to give a little shout out to Bailey Sarian and Robert Welsh, whose Get Ready With Me series inspired me to create this one. So without further ado, let's go. One fine winter day, a queen looked out her black windowsill at a snowy scene. She was sewing and pricked her finger on a needle and watched as her blood fell into the snow and thought how pretty it looked. She wished for a child with black hair, skin as white as snow, and lips as red as blood. Soon after, she had a daughter who was as white as snow. She had hair as black as her windowsill and lips as red as blood. And therefore, they called her Little Snow White. Unfortunately, due to complications, the queen died during childbirth. A year later, the king took a wife who was absolutely beautiful but extremely arrogant and couldn't stand if someone was more beautiful than her. She had a magic mirror, and every morning she would ask it, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in the land is fairest of all?" To which the mirror would always answer, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." Now, as Snow White grew up, she became more and more beautiful every day until one day when she was 7 years old, the queen asked the mirror who was the fairest in the land, to which the mirror answered, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen became quite angry when she heard this and developed a deep hatred for Snow White, so much so that every time she looked at her, she would boil with rage. It became so bad that finally she commanded the huntsman to take Snow White into the forest, cut out her lungs and liver, and bring them back to her as proof that he had killed her. Now, the huntsman takes Snow White into the forest, but she begs him not to kill her and that she'll run away instead, and he thinks she is so beautiful and innocent that he decides to let her go. He kills a passing boar and cuts out its lungs and liver to pass off to the queen. He takes the boar organs back to the queen, and she believes him, has the liver and lungs boiled, and eats them, all the while thinking they're Snow White's. Cannibal! Meanwhile, Snow White runs around the forest trying to get as far away from the castle as possible. It's nearly evening when she comes across a tiny house that she decides to enter in hopes of getting rest. When she enters the house, she sees that everything is miniature. There's a small table with 7 plates that are filled with food, and on the other end there are 7 little beds lined up against the wall. Now, Snow White is so hungry that she decides to eat a piece of food from each of the plates, so she's only taking a little bit. Once Snow White had taken a piece of food from each of the plates and was starting to feel sleepy, she decides to lay in one of the beds. She was exhausted from stealing other people's food, okay? She tries every bed until she finds the most comfortable one, which is the 7th bed that she tries. Now, late in the evening, the owners of the house return. The owners are 7 little dwarves who work in the mines. They enter their house and they can tell pretty quickly that something is off. They see that food is missing from their plates and that all of their bed sheets are ruffled. And finally, they discover the sleeping girl in the last bed. They thought she was so beautiful and peaceful looking that they let her spend the rest of the night and took turns throughout the night sharing their bed with the 7th dwarf. In the morning, Snow wakes up and is a little freaked out to see the dwarves there, but she tells them her story and they end up inviting her to live with them and be their live-in housemaid, which is pretty cool. But they say definitely don't let anyone in ever because her stepmom would figure out pretty quickly that Snow had survived the attack, and she was bound to come calling. Speaking of the queen, you just know after she gobbled those organs up that she went running right to her mirror and asked, "Who is the fairest in all of the land?" "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White beyond the mountains, with the 7 dwarves, is still 1,000 times fairer than you." It doesn't take the queen long to figure out that the huntsman had deceived her and that Snow White was still alive. And you guessed it, she was pissed. So she decides to take matters into her own hands. If you want something done right, just do it yourself. She disguises herself as an old woman and knocks on the door of the dwarf's cottage, asking if anyone wants to buy any wares that she has. Snow White is still pretty naive, so she opens the door and asks to try on one of the bodices that the queen has. Obviously, she doesn't know it's the queen. The queen, disguised as the old woman, offers to help her into the bodice and ties the laces so tight that Snow can't breathe. She passes out and the queen races home, thinking that she's finally succeeded. Now, luckily, this went down just before the dwarves came home from work. So when they get home and find Snow passed out, they immediately cut open her bodice and she's able to breathe again. Snow tells them what happens and they're certain that this was the evil queen. They're so certain that it's the evil queen, and they remind Snow that she really can't trust anybody and she can't let anybody in the cottage when they're not there. Meanwhile, the queen races home to talk to her mirror, and when she asks the mirror who is the fairest of them all, the mirror says, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White beyond the mountains, who lives with the dwarves, is still 1,000 times fairer than you." When the queen heard that, she was pissed. She decreed that this time she would kill Snow White for good. This time she set out to destroy Snow White by making a poisoned comb. She dresses up again, this time as a different old woman, and goes to knock on the door of the dwarves. Now this time, when Snow sees the old woman, she hesitates before letting her in. But this old woman seems pretty harmless, and the comb looks so pretty to her that she allows her in to comb her hair. Now, almost as soon as the old woman begins to brush Snow White's hair, she falls on the ground unconscious. And once again, the queen races off to check herself out in the mirror. Vanity! Now, once again, it was close to the end of the day, so the dwarves came home pretty soon after the queen had taken off. They look around Snow White and see pretty quickly that the comb is likely the cause. One sec. And they go to pick up the comb, and almost immediately Snow White wakes up, tells them what happens, and once again they warn her not to let any strangers in their house without them around. The queen, meanwhile, once again raced home to be told by her mirror, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White beyond the mountains with the dwarves is still fairer than you." Now, this time the queen flies off the handle. If you thought she was pissed before, oh, you should have seen her now. She makes a poisoned apple and disguises herself as a peasant woman to try and trick Snow this time. And she goes to knock on the door of the dwarves. This time, Snow refuses to let the stranger in, but is tempted by the apples that she has in her basket. So the peasant woman offers to split an apple with her so she knows it's not poisonous. Now, she got her good this time because she designed this apple to be half poisoned and the other half not. So she cuts the apple in half and gives herself the non-poisoned half, takes a bite, and says, "See, it's perfectly safe to eat." So Snow takes a bite and immediately falls on the ground dead. The queen races home and asks her mirror who's the fairest in all the land, and the mirror says, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." Finally, the queen can have some peace. When the dwarves returned home that night, they found Snow White passed out on the ground, and there was nothing that they could do to revive her. They cried for 3 days after discovering her body, before they decided that they needed to do something with the corpse. But she still looked so alive and she wasn't decomposing, so they decided instead of burying her that they put her in a glass coffin on the mountain. Now, several years pass and they each take turns watching over Snow White in her coffin, and eventually one day a prince comes along and thinks she is so beautiful that he wants to take her with him. They're like, "This guy wants to take a corpse? Like, that's weird, man." He's like, "But guys, like, look how beautiful she is." And they're like, "True, okay, yeah, you can have her." So they agree to let the prince take her away, and the prince orders his servants to pick up the coffin, but one of the servants stumbles, and Snow White actually ends up falling out of her coffin, and in the process, the piece of apple that's stuck in her throat becomes dislodged, and she opens her eyes. When she opens her eyes, the prince is like, "Oh my god, you're so beautiful. I just saved you. You should come home with me and marry me." Now, the best way to end this story is to just read you the ending. So give me 1 second here. The prince told her what had happened and then said, "I love you more than anything else in the world. Come with me to my castle where we shall be wed." Snow White loved him and she went with him. Their wedding was planned with great splendor and majesty. Snow White's godless stepmother was also invited to the feast. After putting on her beautiful clothes, she stepped before her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" The mirror answered, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true, but the young queen is 1,000 times fairer than you." The wicked queen uttered a curse, and she became so frightened that she did not know what to do. At first, she didn't want to go to the wedding, but she found no peace. She had to go see the young queen who had replaced her. When she arrived, she recognized Snow White, and terrorized, she could only stand there without moving. Then they put a pair of iron shoes into hot coals. They were brought forth with tongs and placed before her. She was forced to step into the red-hot shoes and dance until she fell down dead. And that's the original story of Snow White. To me, the moral of this story is tied in with jealousy and how bitter and angry it can cause you to be. I mean, this queen tried to have Snow White killed 4 times unsuccessfully. You'd think after the first time she'd give up, but persistence is key, right? The queen is also punished for her actions by having to dance around in these hot iron shoes. Finally, am I right? I mean, the punishment is pretty gruesome, but I think this may be our first story where our antagonist is punished for what they did. And it's about time. Also, where was her dad during all of this? Would he not have noticed his wife trying to kill his 7-year-old daughter? I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are on Snow White and her 7 dwarves. And also, let me know what you think of this look. I was kind of going for, like, inspired by the Evil Queen, and I think I nailed it. If you like this video, if you like my vibe, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Take it easy.